Ms. Jackson-Lee.
Chairman, thank you very much. Ms. Sullivan, you are right. You have the responsibility of protecting our president. And you know in a letter that I wrote to the Secretary of Homeland Security, which I believe should be more intimately involved in this issue as we go forward, I indicated my appreciation for the brave men and women that serve in the Secret Service, and I will never step back from that representation. I also acknowledge the fact that you've said there's no margin for error. I want to applaud you for the 1.2 million people that have come in securely, and I want to join you in recognizing that you staff up, man up and woman up when you need to, but I want to join my colleagues and say this is a time to understand what happened and what kind of resources going forward. So let me say to you that my perspective is that this is a law enforcement issue, a criminal activity that could have generated into a horrific incident at a state dinner in Washington, D.C., in the White House, in what has been classified as the most powerful nation in the world, in the backdrop of the Mumbai incident that occurred a year, almost to the day, of the visit of the Prime Minister of the great country of India. So I'd like to just show you how severe I think these circumstances are. We've seen these over and over again. Severe, absolutely severe, because the person standing there was not vetted, and to the report that you've submitted to us was not on any list. Severe, when we see a picture that we have seen over and over again on the severe violation and potential threat to the President and Vice President of the United States. Again, in another location altogether, in an uninvited circumstance, standing with the United States military. I'm sure that they could take care of themselves, but severe. At the same time, the Prime Minister of the nation that suffered this terrorist act was there. So let me focus on why I believe this is a law enforcement issue. You may not be able to discuss a lot of it, but let me quickly go through my point. At 15th and Alexander Hamilton Place, was there a Secret Service personnel there?
There was.
And did that Secret Service personnel inquire of the Salahils, who I believe came, according to your report, to that checkpoint? Were they invited guests?
Those people presented themselves as being invited.
Was there a discussion?
There was, as far as I know.
And in your report it says they insisted they were invited, were allowed to proceed to the second pedestrian checkpoint. Do you assume that if they insisted that they were invited, that they spoke to a Secret Service officer?
At the first checkpoint, they
Yes.
did talk to one of our people.
There was dialogue and conversation.
Correct.
And did they, in that dialogue and conversation, again, speak to a federal officer?
They did.
And in a federal officer, are the actions of the individual speaking to a federal officer covered by federal law?
They are.
So let me proceed on the idea that in 18 U.S. 1001, it says that anyone who proceeds to falsify, conceal, or cover up by any trick, scheme, or device is violating a federal law. We can talk about the Secret Service, who you have mentioned that you had more than a faux pas. The lives of these individuals were threatened. But we cannot get away from the fact that the Salahis are playing with the attitudes and the trends and the dangers of what we live in. And so I'd like to offer into the record and ask you a question in particular. There is an email that has the Salahis reporting that Senator Harry Reid and his wife, Kuma Gupta and her husband, and Bob Stevens and his wife will not be at the dinner. Can you tell me how they would have access to this kind of classified information? Is the White House list where people are not coming, is there a list printed saying these people will not show up?
Congresswoman, I don't know where they got that information from.
There is also an additional statute that suggests in 18 U.S.C. 1036 that says entry by false pretenses to any real property. Whoever by any fraud or false pretense enters or attempts to enter. Were they on the list to your knowledge?
They were not on the list.
Do you believe if they entered onto the premises discussing this with the Secret Service, who made a mistake, more than what we would like, did they enter on false pretenses?
Ma'am, As I said before, we're in the middle of a criminal investigation here. U.S. Attorney's Office.
And I understand that you may not be able to answer. Did they enter with approval in terms of being on a list to your knowledge?
Again, ma'am, they were not on the list, but it's our mistake because they weren't on the list. We let them through.
And they were not on the list and therefore not vetted? Is that your understanding? Is the White House considered a federal building?
It is.
All right. Mr. Chairman, I just simply want to submit into the record 4 or 5, I don't know if we're having a second round, but 4 or 5 of these emails that reflect the knowledge of the Salahils, that they were not invited, and their misrepresentation in a very, very large and conspicuous way.
Without objection.
I yield back.
Can I make one more comment to the Congresswoman? Because she did, you know, I feel I have to defend my boss here. Secretary Napolitano has been intimately involved with me on this investigation. We've been speaking daily regarding this. We spoke about a half hour before I came up here for this testimony. So I would not want to leave, you know, any indication or have you under the impression that she has not been intimately involved with this. We have been talking daily about this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I look forward to meeting with Secretary Napolitano. I'm sure she'll meet with the committee. Thank you very much.